Hi, I'm Mark, and today on Outside Views I want to talk about the Brexiteer promises of great trade deals, especially with the USA, and Sunak's visit there, of course. The UK has been engaged in negotiating new trade agreements since leaving the EU. It has, let's say, secured trade deals with several countries, including the EU itself, but the extent to which these agreements can't replace the benefits of EU membership are quite clear. The long-term effects on the UK's global standing and economic prospects are yet to fully materialize, so they didn't realize it yet. The UK sought to roll over existing trade agreements that the EU had with other countries before Brexit, aiming to maintain continuity in trade. And the UK has replicated, about 70, 80 existing EU trade agreements, ensuring that the UK maintains trade relationships with countries like Canada, South Korea, and Switzerland. One of the only two real new trade deals is with Australia, and one of the main criticisms of the deal revolves around the potential impact on UK farmers, particularly in the agricultural sector. Australian farmers operate on a larger scale and have lower production costs in certain areas, and that includes beef and lamb. And the fear is that increased imports from Australia could lead to increased competition for UK farmers and potentially put some of them at a disadvantage. And I mention it because it just went into force, like New Zealand. And another concern is relating to differing food safety and standards between the UK and Australia. The UK has stricter regulations in areas such as pesticide usage, animal welfare, and food additives. And there are worries that increased imports from Australia, which may not adhere to the same standards, could compromise food safety and at the same time consumer confidence in the UK. And some critics argue that the deal could have negative implications for the environment. Because, as I said, Australia has different environmental standards and regulations compared to the UK, particularly regarding issues such as deforestation, biodiversity protection, and carbon emissions. The fear is that increased imports from Australia could lead to the importation of products that contribute to deforestation or have a higher carbon footprint. The trade deal could potentially impact certain domestic industries in the UK then, and increased competition from Australian goods could affect sectors such manufacturing, textiles, and the automotive industries, where Australian products might have a comparative advantage. Concerns have been raised about the potential inclusions of provisions related to public services and investment protections in the trade deal. Critics worry that such provisions could limit the UK government's ability to regulate public services and protect certain industries. But as mentioned in the start of the video, of course, we have to talk about the big promise of a US-UK trade deal, especially because of Rishi Sunak's visit to the US that happened on Thursday. As a sovereign state, Great Britain wanted to conclude trade agreements with the rest of the world after Brexit, as I said. A deal with the USA in particular was considered a desired goal. But more than 3 years after the exit, the progress is, let's say, manageable. Great Britain clearly missed the target it set itself for post-Brexit trade agreements at the turn of the year. Less than 2/3 of the volume of foreign trade has so far been covered by post-Brexit trade agreements, as even a spokesman for the British Department of Commerce had to confirm at the beginning of the year. And originally, the government in London had set a target for new trade contracts to account for 80% by the end of 2022 already. The possibility as a sovereign state to conclude its own trade agreements free of EU regulations was indeed one of the central promises of Brexit. But they forgot how important the EU is as a trading partner in comparison to those fantasies about the USA as a trading partner. Because there is a lot of wishful thinking behind it. On the one hand, there is the question of what big deals can be negotiated with the USA. First with Trump and now with Biden, who's angry because of Northern Ireland. So what can they win there? And on the other hand, the economic structure in Great Britain. The USA aren't all that different there, so you can't really gain that much from an agreement. And therefore, a marginal gain in the US is possible. And this is also confirmed by the numbers, because almost half of all exports from the island end up where? Exactly, in countries of the European Union. and last year it was a good 44%. Incidentally, this is probably also the reason for the British government's, let's say, ballyhoo in recent years. It's an attempt not to lose touch with Europe through Brexit, and still sell the thing as if Britain would be completely independent of trade in the future. According to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, post-Brexit, Britain is now as reliable and attractive as before, because he said in Washington, I know some people have been wondering what kind of partner Britain would be after we leave the EU. He said that in a joint press conference with US President Joe Biden in Washington on Thursday. And Sunak said, I would say, judge us by our actions. Mr. Sunak, that's exactly what I do. But he says Britain remains committed to its values, but is changing. We are strengthening our ties not only with old friends like America and Europe, but also with new friends in the Indo-Pacific region, Sunak said. And the USA and Great Britain want to work more closely together economically in the future. Washington and London are determined to work together to build resilient, diversified and secure supply chains and reduce strategic dependencies. That's at least what the White House said after the meeting between US President Joe Biden and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. They want to take a leadership role in future technologies and ensure that new technologies work for our democracies and our security and not against them, they said. And in addition, it would be about further strengthening our alliance in the areas of defense, health, security and space travel. And countries like China and Russia are willing to manipulate and exploit our openness, steal our intellectual property, use technology for authoritarian ends, or siphon off vital resources like energy. That's what Sunak said about this. But Sunak spoke of an economic partnership with the USA for a new era that has never existed before. And the British Prime Minister announced that negotiations would also begin on a new agreement on critical materials. And Biden emphasized that this partnership is also important for national security. But if you listen to everything, there was once again no talk of a comprehensive US-UK trade deal, which the Brexiteers had always boasted about. But at least the US and the UK have reiterated their long-term support for Ukraine. Kremlin chief Vladimir Putin believes the alliance is tiring up and giving up. That's what the British Prime Minister Sunak said at the White House conference there. But that's not the case. We're not going anywhere, he said. They will be there for Ukraine as long as it's necessary. And US President Joe Biden said long-term support was also being sought to deter future aggression. Give Russia-attacked Ukraine what it needs on the battlefield now and help strengthen the military in the long term. He assumes that this support will actually be provided, even if there are some voices in the US Congress debating whether they should continue to support Ukraine and how long they should support them. The meeting in the White House was the fourth between the US President and the British Prime Minister in 4 months. The British government was very keen in the run-up to emphasize this fact as a sign of the traditionally close ties across the Atlantic. It's still clear how Biden, during his visit to Northern Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, fobbed off the British Prime Minister with just a brief bilateral meeting in a hotel bar, before spending days in Ireland celebrating his descent from the Emerald Isle. And British media were quite irritated about this. The US Democrat, who is almost twice as old as the Conservative Brit, later said that with his trip he wanted to make it clear to the British that they had to stick to the laboriously reached agreement with Brussels on the Brexit rules for Northern Ireland. One reason for Biden's skepticism is Britain's exit from the EU. Unlike his predecessor Donald Trump, who promised Britain a swift major post-Brexit trade deal, Biden has never been a fan of Britain leaving the EU. In the meantime, yes, relations are said to have improved a bit. That's what diplomats said in the run-up to the visit. But this is mainly due to the high British commitment to Ukraine, and all around Brexit is still a problem. Time and again, Sunak has pushed ahead with supply of weapons, be it main battle tanks, longer-range cruise missiles, or the establishment of a fighter jet coalition. And after their meeting, Biden and Sunak did not talk publicly about more detailed plans for a possible delivery of American-designed F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. And that is what this fighter jet coalition is mainly about at the moment. But I wanted to give you a little roundup of this visit in this video when we're talking about the USA trade deal. But one thing is still clear. The American government is still not happy with what's happening regarding Brexit. That Sunak managed to get the Windsor framework negotiated with Brussels definitely helped a bit. But with all the DUP is doing, with all the right wing of the Conservative Party is doing, that will not help getting a comprehensive US-UK trade deal. And so this is still far out there, no matter what any Brexiteers might tell you. And so it's getting interesting. But there are a lot of broken Brexit promises. That's why I made this small series this weekend, and it will continue through at least to Monday, to just remind everyone what they promised in the Leave campaign and how the situation is today regarding their promises. And of course, this is my UK channel that started with Brexit, and Brexit will be the main topic of this channel for a very long time. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.